So 9 Souls is really good. It's an incredible 2D Souls-like with a gorgeous art style and a parry mechanic right out of Sekiro. Of course, I probably don't need to tell you that. It's been sitting at overwhelmingly positive on Steam for a while now. If you haven't played it, then you really should. It's well worth it. And like with most Souls-likes, one of its greatest strengths are its boss fights, so I thought it'd be fun to take a detailed look at one of them. Possible small spoilers for the game, but the fight was shown in the trailer, so it shouldn't ruin anything. I was debating on whether to use Lady Ethereal for this video or Ji, both of which are incredibly good fights, standing above the other fights even on a roster of excellent boss fights that are already amazing in their own right. I decided on Lady Ethereal because she's the barrier to the late game fights and not only trains you for what to expect, but also trains you how to fight her. In a way, she sort of shares that aspect with Genichiro, though she comes a bit later in her respective game. And Lady Butterfly may be a more tempting comparison. I won't talk about her story to avoid spoilers for those who still haven't played. Needless to say, all the bosses have their own stories, they're well written, and knowing them definitely adds to the fight, but we're going to focus on the fight in a mechanical aspect. That said, I'll still mention the exceptional presentation. Fans of Madoka Magica will feel right at home. Lady Ethereal is definitely the most out there of the arenas you fight in, and it's all the more incredible for it. You'll notice there's a heavy theme of butterflies. From the butterflies that make up ribbons on the stage you fight on, to cocoons hanging in the background, and obviously Lady Ethereal's design itself. Speaking of stage, the theater elements give the feel of this whole thing being a performance of sorts, including curtains drawing between phase transitions. Then there's the giant head splitting open in the background. Oh, and I just noticed that the trees are actually hands. I didn't get that until now. I won't expand any more on that, it's clear what it represents when you play the game. Then there's the music, which is just fantastic. Take a listen. Moving on to the fight itself now, the fight has multiple phases, 3 in total. They each build off of the last. A little faster, a few more moves, just a little more each phase until you're at the speed of the other in-game fights. The first phase is the slowest and also the shortest. It shows off most of the fight's attacks basically one at a time. Even if you get hit, there's still plenty of time to heal. Once you have even a basic grasp of the moves, you're not likely to need to heal at all until the next phase. Looking at the moves present in Phase 1, there are a set of 3 unblockable arrows that she can fire out. I'm pretty sure you can use the unbounded counter on them, but I always dodge them since you're given plenty of space to do that, and it makes it easier for me to block other attacks that may come in. They don't come out quickly, so this ends up being one of the easiest attacks to avoid. Similarly, she has an unblockable attack that comes in from above and spikes into the ground. This is another one I always prefer dashing away from since it's always the safest option. The trickiest move for me to learn in this phase was the other unblockable attack. Instead of the standard parry or the unbounded counter, you need a jump and parry. My problem is that these moves are separated from the ones you can unbounded counter by a green aura that appears as the attack sweeps across the screen. It's just that the signal for that attack comes after the attack starts, but the tell for the attack uses the standard unbounded counter colors. I'd personally prefer it if the green aura was present from the start and more emphasized. It's not a huge complaint, especially for this fight. The tell for this move is very distinct, so once you learn it, it's not a problem to predict and punish. 2 attacks that have pretty similar tells are her claw swipes. Both will have her appear at either side of the screen, but if she's in the lower corner, she'll stop in front of you and swipe twice. If she's in the upper corner, she'll sweep across the screen, swiping once. Even if you don't immediately recognize the difference between the 2 attacks at first, only the claw swipes start like this, and blocking them will work the same for either. The only difference is one will require you to block twice in a row. Considering that one will leave her right in front of you and the other will be way across the screen, you won't have a problem knowing if you need to block again or not. The last 2 moves we'll see this phase are her other projectiles. There's a slow-moving orb that homes in on you, but it isn't a threat on its own. It can mess with your rhythm if you leave it for too long, but parrying it disperses it, clearing it out of the way. This is true for basically all projectile moves, including the other one in this fight. Lady Ethereal creates 3 blue petals that she can fire out. These can also be blocked with the normal parry, although I find the aerial parry gets me closer to a position I can attack from. This one is really satisfying to parry and fills up the key charge quickly, so it gives a good opportunity to stack up a lot of damage. Throughout the first phase, you'll notice that she'll just sort of wait after each attack before disappearing. This lets you play with how you can follow up with these attacks. You'll of course be able to use your standard combo or attach a talisman. If you play with mixing things up though, you can find out that you can get some hits in and still get a talisman on. If you're using full control, you'll find you can still apply it even if she disappeared, as long as the initial attachment happened before that. It shouldn't take too long to learn this phase, and since this phase won't have a lot of health, the fight ramps up each time you repeat it, rather than starting at 100. At the start of the second phase, Lady Ethereal will spawn in multiple clones. All of her attacks will come in the same as the first phase, but now they'll come in faster, usually more than one at a time. But they're always staggered, so blocking one gives you time to block the others. This is where the fight really begins. The pace switch might come as a surprise the first time around, but I never found it overwhelming. Every time you have to restart the fight, you get a chance to practice defending the attacks at a slower pace. At some point, you'll have to attack back though, and Lady Ethereal's shadows don't affect the health bar. That's where you'll find out who to focus the attacks on. A single attack will disrupt the shadow immediately, but Lady Ethereal herself will just take the hit, sometimes losing the shadow over her face depending on the attack she just used. The attack you have to counter with a jump counter always does this immediately. Once you know you're attacking the real thing, you can get a few hits in, but you'll have to keep dodging attacks that are coming in. Attaching a talisman instead will clear out the other ghosts coming in and give you plenty of time to charge your talisman, even if you're using full control style. She has more health in this phase, but if you keep calm, it won't be long until you can finish it reliably. When her third phase starts, she'll spawn in even more clones, but her face won't be covered this time. It can be tempting to feel the need to check each shadow like you did in the second phase on your first time through this fight. Since you always know which one is the real one, you can just focus on blocking until you have an opportunity to do some real damage. There's still some downtime in between sets of attacks to let you heal if you need to and can survive until then. The attacks themselves will come out faster than phase 2, but it's still the same attacks, so you'll have plenty of practice on how to handle them. She does have two new attacks to watch out for. One where she charges an attack while her clones will sweep in with that attack you have to jump counter. They don't have the green aura, which I think they should have, but maybe unbounded counters work on them. I never tried. Once they're done, Lady Ethereal will sweep in with a claw swipe. It can be intimidating at first, but it's essentially the same attacks as before. They'll just come out fast. Aerial counters will prevent you from having to change your facing to block and give you more control on positioning yourself. Those aerial counters are essential for comfortably blocking the other attack that appears in this phase. She'll start charging a large attack above your head. When it forms an orb of energy, two of her clones will appear on either side. They'll use that sweeping claw strike from the other phases, but you won't have any room between them. After their attack, Lady Ethereal will slam down the energy she's been building, breaking the stage. This one can be hard to learn at first. I wouldn't be surprised if it's what most people die to here. A dash to the side can keep you safe, but there is some level of needing to time the invincibility frames right. It can make dodging feel unintuitive at first, and I think I would shrink the orb of energy a little to make the timing easier to grasp. Once you are able to dodge it reliably, you'll be left at the top of the screen with Lady Ethereal, creating a great opportunity to put some damage on her. It can be kind of hard to see at the very top of the screen, so it's important not to lose track of your position. Altogether, it's a really fun fight. I'm not one to do challenge runs usually, but this was so well put together that you don't need to use any given set of Jades, so I decided to run through the fight without any. I was going for a no-hit run, but I took internal damage by not timing the parries quite right. It was close enough for me, but I don't think it really counts. I'm going to end the video showing off the full fight, so before I do, let's get the outro out of the way. Support me on Patreon if you want to guarantee more of these videos. Like, comment, subscribe, and share the videos if you enjoy them. And as always, have a nice day. Now, here's the full fight.